In this video, I'm going to show you two techniques for making custom patterns, which is a very important thing if you're going to be making any type of garments. So, two types of patterns. Good morning for me. Welcome to a very cold and gloomy black country day, hence the hat, the coat, the apron, the fire. It's freezing today, but we're down in the shop anyway, and I haven't done a video. Well, it wasn't that long ago when I did a video, but I wanted to try and get a video a week. I don't think that's going to happen because it's apparently the wrestling world doesn't recognise a lockdown, which is great because I've been as busy as ever. So I'm taking this time in between waiting for fabric. Just finished a job and now I'm waiting for fabric, so thought I would just run a quick video maybe. We'll see how it goes. So today, as you saw by the title, this is how to make a pattern for something. It's a really important part of gear making is to be able to, one, use a pre-made pattern, one that you buy off the internet, or you go to a haberdashery or whatever and you buy a pattern. Or two, how to replicate pattern using an existing item of clothing that you might have. I'm going to be using these trunks. Still for sale, by the way. Yeah, go to Instagram. These are for sale. They're just hanging around in the shop as an example of trunks, but they're perfectly fine. You know, they're all lined and drawstring and everything. You know, go to my Instagram if you're interested in these. But we're going to be using those to take a pattern, and also we're going to be looking at how to sort of make a pattern directly onto a form like this. We did this in the coat, but I'll just go into a little bit more detail. We'll probably make something simple like a vest or something like that, just to show you how to use a form to make a pattern. So yeah, okay, yeah, here we go. So what this one is going to be about is taking an existing thing that you have. It can be anything, a t-shirt, trousers, anything you like, and making a pattern from this so you can make multiple versions of this. And this one is probably the most easiest thing to do, and it's not going to be a really long example. What we need is a piece of paper. And the first step basically is we're going to do the back first because it's the widest point. And so you're simply just laying your the garment that you're trying to, sorry, bear with me a second, just need to get something. So the garment that you want to replicate, laying that flat, as flat as you can. You're never going to get them flat because they're not designed to lay flat. They're like designed to lay on a body. So laying these flat is going to be, oh yeah, I'm talking nonsense now. What I'm trying to say is you won't lie them sort of paper flat. There'll always be some creases in them. Yeah, right, okay. I'm just going to put some weights on this, and that'll help. That'll help flatten it a little bit. So just, whatever you can get. It doesn't have to be anything. These are just washers. I just use these big washers. I find these are the best weights. I'm just going to weigh that down. Now, what you do need to make sure, because what we're only going to do, we're only going to be working on one side. We'll draw the whole thing, but we're only going to be working on one side. Because this is a symmetrical pattern, it's the same both sides. We only need to pattern one half. So my trunk patterns, it's only one half, and then you just fold the fabric, add the pattern on, cut, and then you get an identical piece. So we're only going to work on one edge. I'm going to work on this edge here. And what I need to do is try and line the seam, the side seam here, as evenly as possible. So I'm not worried about what's going on over here now. And I'm going to use my weights to weigh that down. So just my side seam is out. There's my side seam. Here is my curve into the groin, and then up to the other side. I'm not too worried about this side. This is the side I want to pattern from. And then simply just draw around. Just draw around the trunks. And we're going to go all the way. I know I said I'm not worried about this side, but draw around the whole thing anyway. Okay? Line it up. Keep pressing the fabric down until you get a rough shape. And that, take it off. You can see that. I'll go over this in a Sharpie maybe when we do the when we trim it up. Now, you need to find the centre of this now. You do that simply just by measuring the top. So we've got 40 centimetres, which is nice. It's not always going to be that nice. So it's a nice, so 20 is the centre of that, that shape. Now, because I've used a piece of paper that's square, top and bottom, I can now fold the paper across that mark that we just made. So there's our mark. I fold the paper against that mark, line the top of the paper and the bottom of the paper together. Make sure you stick to your mark. Okay. And press. Okay, so there we go. There's our centre line. And now what we can do is we can find that centre line, that crease that we just created. Find it, line it up with a ruler and draw a line down the middle. Okay, that's our centre line. We're working on this, not interested in that side. All we want is this side. But what we have to do now, we have to what you call truing. We true in the pattern because now the lines are all wonky and they're not square. So I will get. Ooh, sorry, I'm on my back. I will get a protractor. Is that what that's called? I'm not sure if that's the right word. I think that's called a protractor or a square. I don't know. One of these, and we're going to get this first corner up here. And what we're going to do, we're going to line it up against the top as best as you can. You're not going to be able to get it on every line because the lines are not straight. But we're going to do it roughly, and then we're going to line the other one with the side of the trunks. So we're looking at this side and this top here. So we're making a square of this corner here. Okay? And then draw that in. Oops. Draw it across. And then bring this top line to the centre line. I have got a bigger one of these. I could have done that in one go, but it's just fell down the back of the cupboard. And I don't want to pull all the cupboard out to get it. So, what we've done now is we've squared that top up. Okay? Now, the curve, you can kind of freehand it if you want, like this. Just slowly follow the curve round until you reach that centre point there. So, and that will be reasonably good enough because, you know, it just goes under the bum cheeks. I mean, there's some people that don't even have this much curve. You could just draw a straight line from there to there, and that gives it sort of lot more of a fitted look rather than a sort of full look. But for this pattern, it has a curve. You can use one of these, which is called a pattern maker or a pattern master, and it has curves, pre-built curves into it, for sleeves and for collars and other things like this. You can offer that up and get a curve that way by just following the curve, but because this really isn't designed for the bum cheek of a wrestling trunks, it's more for sort of sleeves and things like that. I tend not to use this as much because the curves don't match what I want. But you can use one of those if you want. But I'm just freehanding it. I know how I want it to look, and I can just keep going over it until I get a nice sweep, a nice curve, like that. You can see on here, I hope this is coming out okay, that we have that nice pattern. Now you can go over that with a, you can now go over that with a Sharpie, you know, just to make sure that those lines are exactly where you want them. Sorry, pull this back. You can draw that line in there, draw your centre line in, and I like to do this because it just looks nice and it's going to show up better on the camera anyway. So, and again, be careful on your Sharpie with the curve because you've just spent that time creating that nice curve. Okay, that's the one half of our pattern. You can now offer this up and it should fit nicely in, which it does. But these are made, these have, they have a waistband, which is a 1-inch waistband. But for a 1-inch waistband, you need 2 inches of fabric because it's folded over. So you have the 1 inch, and then the 2nd inch folds over. So there's the 2nd inch inside. There's the 1st inch, which you see. So you have 2-inch fabric on the top. So that's the piece that's folded underneath, and that's the piece that's on the top. Sorry about the disruption in the video, then somebody just rang me. It's amazing, my phone never rings, ever. Nobody rings me, I get text messages. As soon as I start filming, people start ringing me. We'll carry on. So we now have to add our seam allowance, because also what we have on this is the side seams, they've been stitched in a centimetre of seam allowance, and the leg holes also have a fold under a piece of elastic with elastic in it, so that's an extra centimetre on there as well. So we now have to translate those measurements to the pattern, because if you just cut it out at this, when you fold this down it's going to be 1 inch too short. When you put the seam allowance at the leg, the bum hole, the leg hole around the bottom, that's also 1 centimetre, and there's 1 centimetre on the side seam. Sorry, I do apologise about that. We're not adding seam allowance to our bum hole. So we're going to add that on, and it's as simple as adding 1 inch all the way across. 1 inch all the way across. All the way across. Okay, taking your ruler, line those edges up like that. Find this edge, line that up. Okay, find your centre, line that up. Okay, so that's your top there. Can we see that on video? There we can. We're now going to add our centimetre onto the side. See, onto the side. Again, just make little marks all the way across on a centimetre. take this, join that up. Okay, like that. We now have a centimetre to do here. Now my double pencil technique isn't quite, it's slightly less than a centimetre, so I won't be using that, but you can use 2 pencils stuck together, and when you draw you actually get 2 lines. That could be a seam allowance, but we're going with a centimetre on this just to be safe. Yep, so we're not going to use that. So now we've got to find the curve. Now you could set up 2 more pencils with the correct seam allowance, or you can just take a tape measure and add. Same as we did on the waist, same as we did on the side, just add the seam allowance on. I'm just going to work my way around that. Bear with me a second. It's a little bit more difficult on a curve, obviously, because you've got to hit all those points correctly, especially when you're drawing it up. Now, okay, now you can actually use a straight ruler to do the curve. It's a little bit tricky and it takes a bit of getting used to. So slow and steady, start on the first point and slowly work, and by the time the pencil gets to the next point, you've moved the ruler. So now I can see that this point is here, and then I can do this, and I just keep turning the ruler like this, hitting all my points. Ooh, change my ruler angle. Hitting all my points as I go. So like that. And you can see by using a straight ruler you can actually make a curve. And then we'll just tie that up. You don't have a seam allowance on this centre seam because it's going to be a fold. It's not going to be a join. You're not joining 2 pieces of fabric together. It's one continuous piece. So we're not going to worry about that. So now we can cut that out. This works the same with anything. It doesn't matter if it's a top, the bottoms. You can do this with anything. Obviously, it gets more complicated. Like, I mean, so a pair of trousers or jeans, for instance, there's a lot more that goes into them than just sort of a flat panel. So you would need to sort of maybe consider getting a pattern. We're now going to cut it onto the seam allowance. Okay, cut it down like that. Cut it down the middle. Okay. Now what you have here now, you have your pattern. And at this point, now it's good to add some instructions on it. So, for instance, I know that this is a 32 to 34 inch. So I might put 32 to 34 inch trunks back, because it's the back portion. Okay, I can then add an arrow and add 1 inch waistband. And then on this section here, I could add cut on fold, because we're going to fold the fabric and cut that. And then I can put here 1 centimetre seam allowance. Okay, and what you have now is a back pattern ready to be used multiple times. If the measurements are slightly different, you just adjust the pattern accordingly. But that is a back pattern. Now the front pattern, we won't do this because it's the same technique. I could now take my back pattern, offer it up, and I could find a rough sort of leg hole curve here, just by running my finger. I can feel the leg curve. I could then add a rough pencil mark to that, transfer that to another piece of paper, and do the same by cutting the leg hole in. And that is pretty much, it's a pretty basic way of making a pattern from an existing pair of trunks. The next one's more fun, a bit more difficult, but it's a good way to do it, and that's dressing the pattern directly onto a form. So yeah, there you go, a nice pattern. Right, so this second technique is my favourite way of patterning, and it's basically doing it directly onto a form. Now this isn't a proper dress form, it's not a proper tailor's dummy. It's basically what you would sort of display clothes on in a shop, but it does work, because as long as the measurements are okay, and you know, technically it does work. We're assuming obviously on this tutorial that we've measured the person and all the measurements have lined up, and this is measured. We might have had to have padded it out maybe a little bit in places. You can pad it using stick-on shoulder pads, and you put them in certain places around the waist, around the chest, places like that, just to bring out that bulk, because it's not saying that everyone's going to be this exact size. So what I've done on this is I've marked this dotted line down the middle, which is the centre front of this dummy. We haven't done a centre back, but I'm not going to worry about that this time, because we're only going to be making the front section, because obviously the back section is an identical technique. So we're only going to go sort of front to side, which will then create like the front part of this vest which we're going to make. So I'm not going to worry too much about the centre back, but I have marked a centre front. I've stretched the fabric and I've made sure that it's the same both ways. You can see the way it sits between the two abs. It is a central dotted line. I might need to have to move the camera because there's a little bit of light. Let me move the camera because this big light patch here is not going to do us any good. Bear with me 1 second, I will be back. Okay, got a slightly better lighting. I will be investing in some better equipment soon. I've not got any kind of setup here for filming. I do want to make sort of better better quality videos, but this is all I have at the moment. It's my phone, and a really rubbish kind of holder, which is why I'm always messing about with the camera positions, but we'll fight through. Okay, so what I've got now is a piece of just cheap muslin or just some cheap cotton. I got this from the fabric store, and it was £1 a metre because it was stained. You can see there was big stains all the way up it, so they couldn't sell it as a they couldn't sell it as a usable fabric. So always worth doing that. If you want cheap fabric, just go to your local fabric store. They're all over the place, and look for the cheapest sort of possible fabric you can find. And you'll also get some bargains like this, which are stained. And this is quite, it's reasonably good quality. It's not great, but okay. What I've done for this, I've cut a piece that is slightly bigger than this whole front section. So it's slightly bigger than from the side to the front, and that's how you would work it anyway. Now if I had another pattern for the back, I would cut another one that was slightly bigger than the back. Again, like the other pattern, we're only working on one side. You don't have to do two sides unless the other side is a different fit. You might have someone that wants a vest top here, but then a full sleeve on this side, or there might be an extra design on this side that you need to pattern. If it's a perfectly symmetrical garment, which is what we're doing, is a vest, just a simple vest, which could eventually be a singlet using the trunk pattern, adding them together, all that kind of thing. But we're just going to do a vest. All I'm doing is working on this one side. So I've cut this piece so it's bigger, it's longer, and it's wider than the section that you're going to be working on. That's important. Don't try and fit it to the lines. If you try and cut it and fit it to the lines, you've got no There's absolutely no play. There's absolutely no give whatsoever. So, first thing we're going to do, I'm going to bring this a little bit closer, is we're going to take, first thing what we did is ironed it. I know it doesn't look like I've ironed it. I've got the world's most rubbish iron. This is about as best as I can get. You want to iron this as flat as possible. You don't want it all creased, but this is okay for what we're doing here. You want to line up one of your edges, this edge, over that centre line. Okay, and you can see the dots through it. You should be able to see the dots through it. Then, remember I said in other videos, get one of these. Okay, you need one of these because you just want to be able to pull a pin and use it. Now what we're going to do, we're just going to attach it loosely for now, using our fingers just to bring it down. We're going to slowly attach it, following the neckline, bringing it in. So we're following the curves of the body. And just use your fingers. Don't go mad. Don't pull it. Don't pull when you're trying to fit a garment. Don't stretch it because then you'll pull. Just sort of take your fingers and kind of just move gently around the curves of the body. Now with female clothes, you have to add extra steps like darts and things like that because women have got more curves than men, so you need to do it slightly different. But because this is quite reasonably flat, we're not going to add any kind of darts or anything like that. So I'm just following, using my fingers just to smooth out the fabric. You'll be unpinning these in and out through the whole thing, and this is just your first initial fit. I'm going to take that right down to the bottom. So we've pinned it up and we've brought it into the neck, so it's going up into the neck. What you don't want to do is have it so, best way to show it, so you see how that's straight. You want to bring that curve into the neck, okay? And you do that again. Just take fingers, smooth it, bring it up, smooth it again, stab, bring it up, and you just want to go just slightly past where, because we're doing a neckline, you want to just bring it up into the neckline. So now we've got the front. We're not going to worry too much about that. Now what you can do, we know that we're going way over on the side. We've got way more than we need. So what I'm going to do now is just cut a bit of this excess off. Let me just get my scissors. We're going to cut a little bit of this excess off now. Just slightly, oops. So don't go right up to the line. Never go right up to the line. Mind cutting through the fabric. Okay, dummy. So I can still see my line, and then I'll just sort of take off that top piece there. Okay, just so it gives us a little bit of. And just repin because I've pulled it a little bit. Like I said, this isn't a proper dummy, so it never works. Like the pins don't really stick in it very well. I will be investing in a dummy, but I don't do this very often, so can't really justify it at the moment. Now we need to bring across the chest and the waist, and we're going to do that again. We have a kink here. Now this is where, like on a female garment, you could put a dart in. It naturally wants to create a bend there, but we're not going to do that. We're going to pin the bottom, and then we're going to pull the top like this, and it's all about just constantly just working the fabric and trying to find the best solution. Like I say, we'll take these pins in and out, in and out, in and out through the whole thing. until we get it right. So the next step I'm going to do, see, as you can see, the more, if I pull, all my pins come out, because like I said, this isn't the right kind of dummy. So now, just using my fingers, I'm going to put a pin at the side. Oh, you can't see. Let me back off a little bit. And what if I back off too much? You're not going to see what I'm doing. I'm going to put a pin here at the side. So we've pulled, and again, just using your fingers, just smooth it out. Find that side seam. I can feel it with my finger. Ideally, I should have drawn that in black so you could see it, but we'll draw it on now anyway. Once we've got all the fabric on, we start making our marks. Okay, again now, we want to start pulling the fabric. Feel that side seam. In we go. Okay, we want to come up now. Feel our side seam again. We're naturally creating a dart there, but we'll get rid of that in a moment. As you can see, I've already started to get rid of it just by using the fingers. Find that side seam, pin, up, pin. You can see now. You can see what we're actually starting to do is create that outfit. Starting to create that form. Now, if this is going to be a fitted top, we want to try and get as much of this bulk out as we can. But we'll do that as we go. First is all just about finding your main points, which is the center. Sorry, the side and the center front. Just finding those initial points, and then we can start tweaking and working the fabric. Now, because this is a vest, we don't need this armhole section, so I'm just going to loosely pin that. And now what I want to do is sort of start rough. I want to start cutting now. You don't want to cut off too much, so I'm just going to trim the shoulder off like this now. I'm going to take it there, like this, and take that off. Okay? I'm starting to work the fabric now. Now what I can do to get rid of some of this this tension here and all these pulls here is I can start to snip into the shoulder, because we don't need to pattern the shoulder hole because it's a hole, so we can cut into that. And then we can take these pins out again, take these side pins out, okay, and then we can now fold, let's take that one out as well. We can now use the cut that we just made on the shoulder to bring the fabric up, and we're starting now to lose that pulling. Now this is why this is a good technique, because you have absolute 100% control over what you make. There's no pattern, there's no drawing. Well, you might have a sketch of what someone's give you. But this is a basic vest. You know, you wouldn't pattern a vest this way because you just buy a pattern off the shelf and use that. You know, this is a little bit extreme for a vest, but it's only an example of what you could do. This is the way that you make dresses, and you know, people make dresses and things like that. I hope this is coming out okay, because we've got a big light patch here which is really annoying. Can I move? Would it help if I move my camera? No, that doesn't help, that's worse. Let's find another better camera position. I'll be back. Okay, I don't think I'm going to get a decent light anywhere in this place at the minute. I do need to invest, I think, in some lighting, but we're here now. So we were pinning this side. Oh, this is frustrating me now. We were pinning this side, and we were using the cuts that we made to alleviate that tension around the body. So as you can see, it's starting to come together now.
a little bit. So I'm going to continue to find that side, and I'm going to continue to pull the fabric up, again only using the tips of my fingers. Don't pull and stretch it. I'm going to make another snip in there because I want to pull this section up. You can even snip here, but don't go right to the side. Again, this will also just help bring any of those folds out. Okay, we're coming up now. Now at this point now we need to start making some marks, because what I don't want to do is end up cutting past the centre seat, the centre front and the side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look through my fabric and I'm going to mark that centre line, and I can see it through the fabric, and I'm going to mark it on to the fabric, so I know that that blue line is my centre. Now what I'm going to do is do the same on the side. I'm being very rough at this because obviously it takes longer, but I don't want to spend all day. Okay, that's the side. And then we have another one, which is the shoulder, which is up here, but you can see we haven't dressed that shoulder properly yet. Now what I can start to do now is just snip off a bit of the excess again, and this is why you add a lot of extra fabric, because you need to be able to cut it and trim it as you go along. Okay, so pin that side in, pin that top in. As you can see, we have a little bit of pull in, but I'm not going to worry too much about that one because it's going to be a stretch fabric anyway, so we'll be able to get rid of that. Now what we're going to do, we're going to try and work the front. Now you can see we've got quite a tight front up here, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to let's try and brighten that up a little bit. It's a little bit better. I'm now going to draw a rough neckline. Now this is all dependent on you, where you want your neckline to sit. You might want a big low neck. I know Pete Dunn has quite a low neck. This is completely up to you. I'm just going to do a basic sort of regular sort of t-shirt, and I'm just eyeballing it and trying to figure out a rough pattern. I'm also then going around the armholes. Again, this is completely your call. I can feel the armhole underneath like that, so I'm creating an armhole, and I can feel where it comes. It comes up here and it comes to there like that. Okay, I'll mark the shoulder again, and then I'll mark that shoulder, and I'll mark that shoulder. Now you can see what's happening now is we're starting to look like something, and you could have narrower straps on the shoulder. You know, it's completely up to you. This is your choice now. You decide what you do on here. Oh, hello. There we go. But as you can see, all these creases don't make for a nice. But what I can do by doing this is I can now make some cuts, removing excess fabric, cutting down into the neck, not going past not going past my pen marks. You can see just by trimming that how it's relieved that tension in the fabric. Okay, so already it's just lost all of that. So now what I can do is start to pin again like this, and you can see these bits have folded out now like this, and we've got a nice flat front here. Okay, I'm going to pin that in. I'm going to decide whether I like my neckline. Yeah, that's okay. On the side here now, because we have a side, I can start to snip in to that side like that, and I can try and alleviate. Don't forget we have this hole, so I can take that away and I can snip to the hole, not too close because you might need to make adjustments, and just keep snipping like that, making lots of little snips. Now we're starting to get rid of that pull. Now that pull's starting to go, and we're marking and lining that up. We have a little pull here on the front, but that's to be expected because it's on a chest. Like I say, if this was a female, you would have to add darts. You could add darts on men's gear if you wanted, but what we're making is a flat top. Okay, so we've got our marks. I've got my shoulder there, my armhole. I'm going to come down here and mark the side like this. Okay, I'm going to bring it all the way down to the bottom because my top is going to come really low. I'm then going to sort of find the bottom of my form, draw that in. I will now find the centre and we'll draw that in. Okay, and we'll draw that up to the top, to our centre. And what we've done is we've created the first pattern. Now this one, you'll cut this out now, you'll true it like we did on the other one. We'll do that now. And then we would then cut it again on some of this cheap fabric, or maybe some cheap spandex because it's a spandex top. We'd create it again, then we offer that up, and then if it fits, if it might need trimming, it might need things taken off it. But for a rough kind of first draft, that is our first pattern. Okay, I hope that was okay. I know this isn't the greatest sort of lighting and videoing, but I'm working with what I've got. So we're going to take that off and go back to the table. Okay, we're back. So this is the pattern we've just done, taken off the form and laid nice and flat. And as you can see, we've got some nice curves. That's where the waist sits, our armhole there, our neck hole. So now we need to cut this out and true it. But before we do, I've got to show you this because I'm pretty proud of this. Look, remember I said we have a pattern master for making armholes and things. So this is an armhole section here, and if I offer this up to my armhole here, move that away, and if I just adjust it where I need it, look at that. I'm pretty pleased with myself about that. That is pretty much a bang on armhole. I'm sorry, but I'm pretty impressed with myself for that. To get an armhole first time, well done me. Right, enough of that. Let's cut this out. rotary cutter. Cut along your lines. This rotary cutter is awful. Cut along here. Cut along my perfect armholes. I am pretty pleased with those armholes, by the way, you probably know. Okay, let's just cut this out roughly. Okay, cut my neck hole out. And this is why you don't want to spend a lot of money on this kind of fabric, because it just ends up in a bin. So. Oops. Okay. There it is. Now we're going to transfer this to paper. Now you can use proper pattern paper. You should use proper pattern paper. But I don't have any, so I'm just going to use regular paper. And lay this on like this. Okay. Again, using my washers to hold it down as much as you can. So about all this junk here. Now I will draw around it. Okay, we have our pattern. I don't know if you can see that. You should be able to see that. I'll sharpie it in a minute anyway. So now we're going to do what we did before, and that is we're going to trim it up. We start off at the shoulder, and I'm going to nice thick line, because you want to distinguish between the rough markings and the good ones. Now, because I was awesome, I'm going to keep going on about this armhole, by the way, because I'm well proud of that. I'm going to use my pattern master to do my armhole, because it was pretty much bang on. Okay, I'm going to draw that round, take it over to there, like that. Now we have this big side section here. Can you see that? Yep. So we'll do that with the ruler technique, you know, where I adjusted the ruler, because it's not a straight line, there's a curvature to it. So I'm going to bring that up as I go, like that. Okay. And then onto the side, just by adjusting my ruler. So my ruler is always on the line, and turning it as you go. You get a nice line like that, a bent line with a straight ruler. The bottom isn't perfectly straight because it curved around the body. So again, keeping the point of the ruler that you're drawing on straight, take the ruler round, follow the curve of the body. If you have to come back, bring it back. Okay, that creates a nice line there. Same on this section. This is a little bit more straight because, well, actually this should be straight, the centre, because that was drawn to a straight line. It's not going to be perfectly straight because you did eyeball it. So for this line, you can just take a ruler from point A to point B, and draw that in as a straight, because you do want that to be a straight line. Okay, like that. Okay, that one is a straight line. And the neck hole, get your pattern maker and see if there's a neck hole, which there should be. It should be the very end of this. You should be able to mark a neck hole from that. As you can see there, that's close enough. And we're going to draw that in. Again, you know, there's no set rules on this neck hole. You can have this neck hole however you want. You could have, you know, all kinds of weird and wonderful shapes if you wanted. Okay, but there you see, that's what that is. That's it trued up. So that's the kind of cruddy, kind of messed up piece, and trued up nice. We've got a nice neck hole, we've got a nice armhole. So this is like a full width shoulder vest. And then again we would make our mark. So here we would say cut, unfold. By doing that, it will give you the full neck. Yeah, and that's pretty much the. I mean, I won't cut all this out because I'm not going to use this anyway, so there's no point in me cutting it all out and dressing it on the dummy. But what you would do now is you would cut this out. You would add seam allowance where necessary. Now the only place I would add seam allowance on this is on this waist edge, because that's where it's going to attach to the back. There's no seam allowance on the centre because it's one piece of fabric. And armholes and neck holes, you would add like a binding on there anyway. So you wouldn't. I mean, you could turn it over and sew it that way, but it looks much neater if you add a binding on there, and I'll show you how to do a binding on one of the videos. So you wouldn't actually add any seam allowance on there whatsoever. And really, even with this being a stretch top, it'd be worth the first fitting that you did, cut it out of some cheap spandex, but don't add any seam allowance, because you want it to fit tight, so you want it to be a little bit smaller anyway. If you do this exactly to size, it's going to be baggy. So you might even want to come slightly less. You want to actually sort of like do negative seam allowance and actually take a centimetre off the whole thing in order for it to fit tight. But that is all dependent on testing and trying and adding the garment on. If it's not a stretch fit, if it's a loose fit, like if you were doing this as a dress or a t-shirt, then you do want your seam allowance, because you don't want it to be skin. You don't want it, no one wants a skin tight t-shirt. You know. You might want to add sort of like an inch seam allowance on the bottom, so you can add a nice sort of wide, like inch wide bottom part there. But essentially, if this is a spandex, when anything I make out of spandex, it's either slightly undersized or it's exactly to the measurements that I was given. That way, you're guaranteed to stretch. You guarantee when it stretches over and then hugs the body, that's how you want it to fit. But for other clothes, you don't want that, because you don't want. No one wants to put like a dress on, or you know, a top or something like that, which is skin tight and you've stretched it out of shape to get it on. So that's when you start adding seam allowance. But all that would come with a second fitting. Like now, this would be put back onto the muslin. This, it would be then cut out again. Then that would be added on to the form again. You try it, test it, see if it works. When you're happy that it works and it fits, then you would transfer these patterns. You would do this again, transfer it to paper, trim it, cut it out. When you're happy that that is the pattern, then and only then do you cut it out on your proper, expensive, final fabric. And then you can't go wrong really, because as long as you've measured that form, you've measured the person and you've matched it to the form, and you've matched your patterns to that form, you can't really go wrong, because there's nothing to go wrong with. If everything's been measured perfectly, you can't go wrong. It's impossible to go wrong, because
You can go wrong in the sewing. You could sew it wrong and, you know, and create pulls. But with the actual pattern itself, you know that pattern is going to fit, and you're confident in your pattern. And again, when you've finished, you would mark on here, like the waist, the chest size, the armhole, you know, the size, the waist size, you know, where to add your folds, where to add your seam allowance, blah blah blah. You know, all your information you write on here, and then you put that away in your pattern folder, and you've got that then. And if anyone comes close to those measurements again, you get this pattern out. If it's slightly bigger, slightly smaller, you take a bit off, you add a bit on, but you know that this pattern works, and that's how you make a pattern from scratch. Now again, I'm going to say I don't at all think that I'm in any way expert at doing this. Quite the opposite. I do this my way. I enjoy it. It's fun. There are seamsters out there, there are dressmakers and tailors out there that are masters at this, and it's called draping. If you go online and look at draping techniques, you'll realise how basic this is, because some people are just absolute wizards at it. I love to watch Nick Verios. If you go onto YouTube and look at Nick Verios on his fashion school, he does this all the time, and he just makes it so fun, and he explains it really well, and that's how I sort of thought I'm gonna have a go at that. So if you are a seamster out there, you're watching this and you're probably laughing at me and thinking, what on earth are you doing? I'm not an expert at this. This is just what I do for fun. I've done it with the school I work at, with the club, the sewing club. We made dresses this way, and they worked, they fit. So, you know, there you go. I'm going to stop waffling on now. So there we are, just a quick basic run through of patterns. There are, you know, you can go more in depth with it. Sorry, I'm burning myself on the fire. I'll just move that fire out of the way. There are other ways you can do that. You can buy a pattern pre-made, and you know it's all there for you. I'm not going to go into that one because all patterns are different. They all work differently, and it can be a bit of a nightmare. Actually, it's actually harder to take a pattern from the shop, from the shelf, and try and adjust it to somebody's sizes. The easiest way to make a pattern is through this. Is by the draping technique, but you need a proper form. I mean, I wouldn't attempt to drape anything too complicated on that, because it is not in any way designed for doing that. It's more of a show. You know, if you went into a shop and there was a coat, that's what that is. I do want to get a proper dress forms, but they're so expensive. They're really expensive, and I need to justify that. But you can buy ones that have got legs and arms and heads, you know, so you could, you know, if you wanted to make a specific pair of trunks, someone asked for a really high pair of trunks, you could just do it straight onto the dummy, you know, no patterns, no sitting there with a pattern, cutting it out and working it out and looking at the back of the pattern and trying to figure out all the different, you're completely in control when you design something this way. I like to design like coats and things like that this way, because with coats you've got a bit more wiggle room with sort of the way they fit. A coat doesn't have to sort of, I mean, I don't think anyone's got a coat that fits, you know, unless you have it made, tailor-made, it's not going to fit you perfectly. I mean, even, you know, this hoodie's too big, you know, it's a bit big, and, you know, but we have got a bit more wiggle room. But obviously as well, if you like a pair of trousers, or you like something that you have, a t-shirt that fits really nice, you know, use this technique, taking it and laying it out and working out it that way. So, you know, you might, I know I've got certain clothes that just fit, you know, they just feel really nice, they fit right, they, you know, or even if you've got a t-shirt that fits okay up on the top, but maybe it's a bit baggy around the waist, or tight on the waist, and you want to, you know, take it, you know, pattern it, add a little bit extra to the waist, make a sample, try it on. If it fits nice, make a t-shirt. You know, that's the world's your oyster, really. But draping technique, definitely one of my one of my favourite ways to do, and it is something that I want to learn more of. I would like to do more of that, but you know, wrestling gear doesn't really call for much draping. You know, it's more sort of wedding dresses and prom dresses and evening dresses, and that kind of thing is what you would use to drape, because you get, you know, the skirts and you get all the fold. You know, you wouldn't really drape a simple vest. You know, it would be I say a waste of time. You know, you could just, you know, pick up a vest pattern, or, you know, it's not that difficult to do that. So yeah, there you go. Patterning, quick run through patterning. I think my subscribers have been going up. It's very small, but still great. Is anybody watching this? I mean, I've got the greatest camera and setup and lighting setup. So thank you if you are subscribed. If you're not and you enjoyed this, please subscribe and press the bell icon and whatever else it is that you have to do now. And all the links and stuff will be, for anything that I've done, will be in the description. I will be investing after Christmas in some lighting, a better camera, some better ways of holding the camera, because I literally have this kind of really rubbish sort of bendy arm type thing which keeps dropping and falling. It's really not the way I want to be filming, and I do want to do better videos. But you know, that's all in good time. So thank you very much for watching. Again, any questions, please whack them in the comments. I've had comments on kick pads and knee pads. One day I will. For now, it'll just be a little bit like this. But one day we will get around to those kinds of things. It's difficult for me to do these videos because I have to work. You know, they have so many jobs waiting. I can only sort of fit these in when I can. So thank you very much if you've got this far, and yeah, that's it. Goodbye. See you on the next one.